part of this wonderful occasion, this initiative. I'll straight away get to the point because we are already behind the schedule. So what I'll do is I'll just stick to the sequence that's there in the email shared with me. But before I kind of invite the panelists, let me just put it on record that we have 5 minutes, and I guess all of us are aware of that. My apologies in advance, but I'll be absolutely brutal. So I would request the panelists to either use a stopwatch or a timer just to make sure that we are done within 5 minutes, so that we can have enough time for discussion. And just in case after 4 minutes and 30 seconds, if you don't start your conclusion, I'm afraid I'll have no other option but to kind of remind you of whatever time is left. So without any further ado, I request Dr. Niramitham Kit from Thailand to share, to speak on revisiting Christian spiritual activities, humanitarian, environmental, and social engagements. Dr. Kit.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Irafa. Let me share my screen. Okay, good evening, everyone from Bangkok, Thailand. Sawasdee krap. My name is Krit Niramitham. I'm a Christian independent scholar. The title of my paper that I will be sharing tonight is Revisiting Christian Spiritual Activities, Humanitarian, Environmental, and Social Engagement. Historically, Christians have played significant roles in doing humanitarian works, promoting creation care, and addressing social issues. However, under the influence of a pessimistic eschatological view, many evangelical Christians believe that human existence and the earth are rapidly moving closer and closer towards destruction. They also understand the notion of salvation as an escape from the present human existence and the current falling world. Subsequently, their primary spiritual activities tend to revolve around saving souls from this declining earth and hell, emphasizing more about the afterlife in heaven and are less concerned about earthly issues. Nevertheless, it is evident that the youth of this generation, including evangelical Christians, are more aware of humanitarian, environmental, and social issues than previous generations. While the awareness can be generated by compassion, it can also come from certain political agendas. Consequently, the Christian youth of this generation who seek to live a spiritual life may wonder how to integrate their Christian values and engage in such issues without being coerced by political propaganda, further searching what the Bible actually says regarding earthly issues. As the Bible has been regarded as the supreme spiritual and ethical source for Christians, in this paper, I revisit Christian spiritual activities through the lenses of Genesis chapters 1 to 2 and Revelation chapter 21 to 22, which are the beginning and the end of the Christian Bible. As the introduction and closing scene of the Christian Bible, these particular chapters have played a fundamental and crucial role in Christian doctrines and traditions. While the first book of the Christian canon, Genesis, invites the readers to see the beginning of the creation as a whole, the final revelation offers visions of God's ultimate purpose for the whole creation. I organized my paper into 5 sections: rest, relationships, roles, restoration, and realization. Rest. According to the first 2 chapters of the Christian Bible, rest, or the Sabbath, involves not only spiritual and physical dimensions, but also humanitarian and environmental aspects. It was created specifically to bring peace and joy to humanity and creation. It is also the ultimate goal of Christians. Relationships. Humankind was created in the image of God to be like Him. The father-children relation implies that humans were given the authority to recreate, express feelings, care, and love, and further ruling over the creation. As God intended this earth to be His temple, where he can meet and interact with humanity and his creation, Christians should take care of his temple by being accountable and responsible for the roles and duties God has entrusted, which is to create a good, moral, and orderly world. However, it is evident that historically and currently, there have been massive disruptions to God's intention. Various forms of wars, poverty, famines, rivalry, abuses, crimes, and many more have emerged in different societies, begging for the restoration of this broken world. In the last two chapters of the Christian Bible, the complete restoration of the whole creation is when heaven comes down and joins the earth, creating the new heaven on the new earth. Although the restoration is not yet complete, Christians should hope to see its completion shortly, further participating in this restorative process. In other words, Christians are responsible for bringing the heavenly kingdom on earth, not bringing earthly people up to heaven by only emphasizing the afterlife and ignoring global issues. As Jesus teaches that the believers to pray, may your kingdom come, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. To conclude, this paper poses that rather than detaching people from this world by only emphasizing life after death, Christians, both adults and youth, should bring heaven into realization on this earth by engaging in humanitarian works, creation care, and social issues, further acknowledging them as spiritual activities. I have also shown in this paper how the beginning and the end of the Christian Bible have many insights to offer to the youth of this generation in living a spiritual, meaningful, and peaceful life on this earth. Therefore, it is instructive to encourage Christian youth to carefully and critically study the Bible, finding theological, spiritual, and practical implications for their lives and societies. Finally, I hope that this paper will create meaningful and further dialogues between Christians and people from different faiths, advocating for the youth of this generation to live out their moral and religious values to impact their societies practically, positively, and peacefully. These are the references that I use in this presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Kit. I cannot be more grateful. You've only exceeded your time limit by 30 seconds. So,
okay, sorry for that, but
no, it's perfectly all right. I think you've set a wonderful example, and I was particularly delighted by this argument in relation to this shift that the youth have brought about, this worldly religiosity. But definitely we'll have more discussion on that. Let me move on to, thank you again, Dr. Kit. Let me move on to the next presenter, Mola Ida from the UK. She's going to present on at the intersection of youth religiosity and civic engagement, an exploration into interfaith youth activism in contemporary society. Mola, you have 5 minutes. Over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Special thanks to the organizers and to all the partnered institutions of today's symposium. And special thanks to Honorable Professor Azad Karam, Religions for Peace Secretary General, and the Honorable Mr. Taha Ayhan, Islamic Cooperation Youth Forum President. We are delighted to be here today and be part of a very encouraging seminar. I'm Amallah Hussein, an Interfaith Youth Network Coordinator at Religions for Peace UK, and I'm here today together with Lucy Plummer and Finn Piero, who are members of the Religions for Peace UK Interfaith Youth Network Steering Committee, to present our research paper exploring the influence of religion and faith on youth environmental activism. Next slide, please. Lucy will be talking about our approach now. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Ada. So our study engages with a twofold take on youth engagement, in that it is written by young people, about young people. And as a network of passionate and active youth, we felt it was important to make a contribution to today's topic for two main reasons. Firstly, to tackle the lack of young leadership that has been recognized as a critical issue in traditional interfaith engagement in a paper by the London School of Economics. And secondly, to counter the dominance of adult-led framings on youth issues and activism, which was found to be an issue also. So now I want to pass to Finn to outline what we did.
Yeah, so our approach to this was to have two focus groups of 8 people in total of our steering committee. And we centered the discussions on the key question of how do faith and civic engagement come together in youth activism to fuel meaningful change. Our two sub-questions were, how do young people understand faith and religion in the 21st century, and how does religion influence young people's social and environmental engagement? We recorded our focus groups and had a discussion. And here's what we found. So we identified 3 key themes. The first one is religion and spirituality. And what we found was that although religion is a very important factor in our focus groups, some young people were more comfortable using spirituality and in expressing that. Could we have the next slide to the quotes, please? One more down. That's good. Yeah, and one more. One more, please. Thank you. Apologies. So the first quote that we have here is, young people nowadays are maybe more interested in spirituality than a certain religion or faith. And we identify this spirituality to be a unique personal experience that each person on this planet has. And religion really feeds into that experience and influences people's everyday actions. So for me, faith is not really a practice. I think it's spiritual and it is a voice in my head. I get inspired by the books I read, the videos I watch, and the people I listen to. Those thoughts in my mind are what goes into my behavior.
And the second key finding from our research was on the topic of collaboration and liberal or global values. So in our review of existing literature, we found a paper on youth and religion in an age of global citizenship identification, which spoke about the contemporary term global citizen, mirroring religious values of justice, development, and cross-cultural learning. Our research drew parallels to this study in a number of ways. So the first quote reflects this. It says, "We've grown up in an era of globalization. The idea of a global citizen is an identity that many young people are naturally imbibing, youth coming together based on a lot of these values which are rooted in religious traditions, a shared sense of wanting to do good." And in our study, we found that some young people expressed some tension when they felt that these global values, or what one young person describes as liberal values, felt like they were rubbing up against some of the traditional orthodox views found in organized religions. There was a sense that some young people feel challenged by a religious authority when it comes before what they see as justice or development. And the second quote is one that reflects that. He says, "There are some uncertainties when it comes to religion, and it does hold me back a bit because I'm thinking, does this fit into what I believe in? Does this culture fit into what I believe?"
And the last finding that we had was in shifting mindsets across generations. Our findings from the literature showed that young people are increasingly understanding the world based on concepts including interconnectedness and interdependence, which help the required shift in mindset from looking out for oneself, one's own, to looking out for everyone as a global community. This intersectionality and environmental injustices seems to be mirrored in how young people understand religion in the 21st century and tackle environmental struggles and problems. This is an attitude that arguably represents a shift with the current generation, who are more likely to work with people who share their goals rather than only with those who share their religious beliefs. I'd like to share 2 quotes from our focus group findings that best reflect that. Religion really gives you a backbone or a moral compass. Young people draw inspiration from faith in terms of morality and social environmental issues. It's really important how our morality comes from our faith and how we then tackle these issues. In my own society, I'm trying to become a teacher, and that has been influenced by a connection that I get from the faith with other people. Connecting with other people is important. Being open, learning from one another. I feel more comfortable with being involved with lots of people rather than sitting at my desk. And our recommendations for further research are to continue.
My apologies, Ida. I'm sorry, but you need to conclude. Please do that.
I will do. Is an international research study to explore young people's perspectives in different countries and find out commonalities and differences, and explore the culture among youth in terms of collaboration that transcends the differences amongst different traditions, and explore which factors make it work. Thank you very much for your precious time. I'm looking forward to receive your questions in the chat later and to further connect with you.
Thank you very much. Infinitely grateful, Ada, Finn, and Lucy, for this very, very, very inspiring presentation. There are a couple of things that I was actually thinking about, particularly in relation to religion, spirituality, globalization, religiosity, interface. I think that can wait maybe towards the end of the session. We can, have some exchange on that. I hope we can. I earnestly hope we can. Thank you once again, and my apologies for sort of speaking in between. I didn't intend to, but I had no other option. So with this, now we move on to the third speaker, third panelist. We have Arshad Athman from Kenya. Arshad is going to speak on form of worship or burden, rethinking Islamic view of youth on environmental conservation. Arshad, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irfan. Thank you so much. I'm Arshad Said Athman from Kenya. I am representing the African Council of Religious Leaders, Religions for Peace. So thank you for sharing the screen. So diving in, form of worship or burden, rethinking Islamic view of youth on environmental conservation. To what extent are Muslim youth consider environmental conservation as a form of worship, and why are Muslim-dominated areas hotspots for solid waste? These are things that my paper tried to question, and also trying to ask the question, does religion matter really? Next slide, please. Well, we know that the landscape in which young people respond to the challenges they face has changed more than ever. Majority of the youth in the current generation are bypassing the traditional participation structures and institutions to express themselves. Unfortunately, industrial development, economic indicators, and consumerism have become the governing parameters of our society today. And there also has been a corresponding erosion of the Muslim youth perception of the holistic understanding of the sacred nexus between the humankind and our environment. We know that our faith scriptures and sacred sources have clear guidelines on the environment, yet our modern societies have lost the understanding and the respect for the interdependence of all forms of life. Islam, however, we know that it has tackled all environmental issues in a comprehensive manner, as clearly stated in the Quran and the narrations by our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And just as an example, during the Caliphate of Umar ibn Khattab, when Abu Musa radiallahu anhu was sent to Al-Basra as the new governor, he addressed the people saying, I was sent to you by Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu in order to teach you the book of your Lord, which is the Quran, and the Sunnah of your Prophet, and to clean your streets, which is a clear illustration that Muslims have the responsibility to take care of our environment. Next slide, please. Well, the big question is, what is our Muslims' youth perspective on the role of religion or faith, and the role that it plays in the protection and conservation of the environment? Next slide. So to effectively study this claim, next slide, please. Yes. So to effectively study this claim, we chose two study areas. One is the Isili area within the Nairobi suburbs, which is in Kenya, and the other one is the Mvira constituency in the coastal region within the Mombasa County. Both study areas, as you can see, are predominantly inhabited by of youth in the Muslim population, but at the same time have witnessed an increase in the generation of solid waste, generally through illegal waste disposal in areas that have been reserved for roads and other services, as evident in the picture. Next slide, please. So the methodology of the research. The research questions targeted two main objectives. One, understanding the youth perspectives on the existing linkages between religion or faith and environmental conservation. The second target objective was, what is the level of youth engagement with faith institutions and other actors on protecting the environment and reducing environmental degradation? The research used both primary and secondary data, which the primary data consisted of semi-structured interviews and focus group discussions, while the secondary was basically a comprehensive review of literature. And we were fortunate enough to interview 120 participants who 76 of which who are male and 44 who are female. Next slide, please. So our results and findings was that all participants acknowledge that environmental conservation is an aspect of Islam. Next slide, please. Yes. Everyone acknowledged that environmental conservation is an aspect of Islam. However, an alarming 75% of our participants admitted to throwing litter inconsiderately without guilt, while 25% felt guilty but justified their actions, that there are no proper waste disposal bins. 90% cited that neglect by parents, local authorities, and religious institutions were the reason why the areas remained hotspots for illegal waste disposal. Next slide. Next slide, please. So there are very reasons that can be drawn from the research and used to explain why the nexus between religious or faith institutions as viable mobilizing agents and the youth has changed. Number one, leadership neglect. We very well know that the administration in the study area is chaotic. Often, policy makers are poorly educated and lack any power to influence real change. Religious institutions and local faith leaders lack effective leadership structures that can effectively engage the local government. We cannot talk of religion and environmental conservation if our local imams or faith leaders are using religious platforms to transcend self-interest, which is more apparent in the African context. We cannot talk about religion and environmental conservation if religious institutions are becoming avenue or platforms for political campaigns for aspiring leaders. This loses the integrity our religious institutions have and the influence that our faith leaders have of the youth congregation. And in turn, the youth are becoming less and less disinterested. Thirdly, our parents have the moral responsibility of teaching their children simple manners such as the correct way of disposing waste. And unfortunately, is that more parents now are actually getting their children the right secular education and forgetting about religious education, which is important. They need to teach.
You need to wrap up. My apologies.
Okay, I'm wrapping up. So next slide, please. So social media and the emergence of social media have also enabled those divisive ways of interacting. Majority of our youth nowadays resonate with online platforms such as Instagram and Facebook. And at the same time, our religious institutions have not adapted to this way of engagement. Thus, we need to ask ourselves, how fast can our religious institutions adapt to these new forms of communication and connecting with their youth congregation? Next slide, please. So in conclusion and recommendations, there's need for the county and central government to realize this enormous potential or the significant contribution that the youth can make in conserving the environment. Our faith leaders need to adapt to these new forms of engagement through social media. They need to create these spaces where the youth can have their voices heard and provide them with leadership opportunities so that they can take this challenge by themselves. Next slide, please. So this is just an illustration. As if there's anything to remember about this presentation, this is a picture of young dancers that are commemorating the World Environment Day, and from the Hindu religious community. And I found it very interesting. Before they started performing, they actually touched the ground and tapped their feet slowly as a way of telling the earth that we are sorry, we are going to step on you as we perform our cultural dance. So these are just examples of how we can engage religion and the youth, and how we can teach the young generation on the importance of conserving the environment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arshad. Much appreciated. My apologies. Turns out I only have to apologize today, but it's just that it's really brutal, 5 minutes. But once again, I could actually see a certain connection. There's a connecting thread between what you spoke about and what those who preceded you spoke about. This worldly religiosity or a certain kind of faith, civic activism connection. We can definitely discuss more on this. I would now like to request the fourth panelist, Mohammad Nishat Hussain from Pakistan. Nishat is going to speak on what is religious and spiritual development and why does it matter. Nishat, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Sure, sir. Assalamu alaikum and hello to everyone. Special thanks to organizers and the institute for this opportunity. So I have 5 minutes. Let's highlight some major points. First of all, I would like to say about environment that youth constitute a large part of the world and will have to live longer with consequences and current environment decisions. For example, depletion of sources, biodiversity loss, and highly long-lived radioactive waste. That are the major issues. So what we need is a awareness of green projects, applying green knowledge and at home and school, colleges. I think it's my belief that mind-blowing outcomes will come, inshallah. The next part is going green transport. That are the parts we are not implementing. We are just saying that our thoughts are not following by the people. We are many educated people are not following these rules and laws. So that's why we are not upcoming on the part. So in Islamic point of view, I would like to say, God says Muslim must act as a guardian of the planet. Muslim must act as a guardian of the planet. For Muslim, there are more than approximately 200 verse, Quranic verse about environment. Life of Prophet, peace be upon him, is example for us. Is example for us. So Islam based on humanity. Islam based on humanity. I would like to recite one verse that Islam says killing of a single human being, killing of a single innocent human being is a killing of a whole mankind. Is a whole mankind. That's what we need to understand. So in my recommendation, so I have less time. Bring equality. Bring equality. Being human being, being equality toward everyone, woman, man, minority, etc. Share wealth with the poor. Share wealth to balance the society. To balance the society, we need to balance the society to reduce extremism, to eliminate extremism from our society. Only used to we need to control our arms sale. We must control our arms sale. Our youth, our young ones who are not prepared for the leave only used to detect our defend. Only used to defend for the defend purpose. We use. And then lastly, I want to say we must need. If you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Jew, if you're a Hindu, we must need to reconsider our religious thought. We must need. We need to reconstruct and reconsider our religious thought to the holy book, in every religious, in every script. We already taught by the God that we need to respect human. We need to respect other societies. We need to respect customs and the other things. We'll spread love. I think we need to spread love. That's what we need. Thank you. That's it from my side.
Oh, is that over, Nishad?
Yes, sir, it's over.
Oh boy, that's fantastic. Although I wish you had spoken for a little longer. I sincerely hope that I did not, play any role in that sort of shorter than duration presentation.
Yeah, I know, but there is a less time, and my article. I have already sent my article. Inshallah, you will read and you will get my point. It's a presentation.
Perfect. I most earnestly look forward to that. Now we have the last the last panelist presenter for today, Luciano Ezequiel Bizin from Argentina. Luciano is going to speak on youth engagement with religious or spiritual communities in social, political, and economic activism, a matter of historical mediation of value. Oh, that's one heck of a title. Luciano, I hope the concern you raised is taken care of, is attended to. Oh, excellent. Okay, so over to you. Thank you. You have 5 minutes, Luciano.
I don't know if I can share the screen myself because the first slide is not okay. It might be a problem of compatibility. So let me share the screen, please. Here, can you see it?
Just a moment. Yeah, we can. Excellent.
You can?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So 5 minutes.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, well, dear colleagues, in the next 5 minutes, we are going to try to understand together 7 models by which any religious or spiritual community can mediate values in history. What is happening if the religious and spiritual communities have ever been the quintessential agents of religious and moral values? Why are not the young people engaging in high numbers with them in activist practices? the answer that came to my mind is the main hypothesis of this paper. Youth are not engaging with religious or spiritual communities, at least with the most traditional ones, in high numbers because most of these communities are not mediating in a proper way their popular wisdom, their sapiential knowledge in history. The article is divided into 5 parts. Let me go to the next slide. The article is divided into 5 parts: the introduction, the theoretical framework, the methodology, the 7 models by which any religious or spiritual community can mediate values in history, and some conclusions and practical recommendations. You can read them in deep in the article. So I will go to the 3rd slide that talk about the way that I approach to the 7 models. All the religious communities or spiritual communities have been interpreted as communication communities. So I analyze the semantic, the syntactic, the pragmatic moment of each process of mediation. The semantic talk about the content that is mediated by a community. The syntactic talk about the way that a community mediates values in history, and the pragmatic moment talk about the community itself, that the community that interprets the values and mediates the values in history on a local ground. So you will see in the paper the 7 models and the analysis from this perspective: the semantic level, the pragmatic level, the syntactic level, the negative moment of every process of mediation, and the kind of engagement that these models provide to the youth. So we can understand why the youth are not engaging in high numbers with the most traditional religious or spiritual communities, because these communities, and that's the hypothesis, as I said, of this paper, are not mediating in a proper way their values in history. The proper way I propose with respect to the mediation process of value is what I call the liberating process of mediation. It's talk about the next: a religious or a spiritual community which mediates its values by this model, the liberating model, started its process of mediation, affirming its own popular wisdom. What is this? The meaning of life and death and the own core of values. In second instance, at the pragmatic level, the community acknowledges which values of the others are compatible with their own core, distinguishing and rejecting those moral elements of the others that tend to dehumanize the local people with whom they share the same ground. The syntax dimension of this process is called analectic, because it involves a dialectical as well as an analogous moment. At the end of the mediation, the religious or spiritual communities transcend its own core of values, creating a new vital synthesis which doesn't reduce the differences of the member of the community and keep them in plural unity without discrimination. This process of mediation of values give enough space to the youth and contemplate them as necessary agents of novelty and structural transformation within a community. And finally, I would like to share some recommendations for the social agents of our societies: religious or spiritual communities, intergovernmental organizations, NGOs, government, business companies, etc. The first recommendation I would like to express is that any social agent should start its process of mediation of values reaffirming its own sapiential knowledge. In second instance, these agents should keep open to the others as if they were responses or answers more than questions. In the third stage, the agent should bring into play its own core of value to put it into dialogue with those of the other living on the same ground. And in the final place, this agent should reject what is dehumanizing in the culture of the others and transcend its own first statements, the own core of value, with the good elements coming from the culture of the others. If our religious or spiritual communities mediate their values in history in a liberating and ethical political way, they will not wonder anymore why the youth are not engaging with them in social, political, and economic activism. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Luciano. It took a little longer than 5 minutes, but that's absolutely fine. So excellent set of ideas. Now it's open for discussion. Anyone, whoever wants to, flag a comment, pose a question. I understand there is a question for Ida and her friends, her colleagues. Ida, would you want to take it up? Ida, Lucy, and Finn.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. My answer would be for this question, and I would like to also give the chance to Lucy and Finn to add their comments, would be, I think when planning events or activism in regards of environmental issues, we have to look out for each other's sensitivity and make sure observance and of rules and are observed and respected. Working together promotes religious literacy and opportunities to forge friendships. This positivity can be brought back to single faith communities where they come from and promote further participation of fellow youth believers to work together in the future. So that could be possible solution to have more engagement. Lucy and Finn, would you like to comment on?
Yeah, I can just say something very quick. Thank you, Ida. I think, well, for me, a focus would be just really trying to expand my network of grassroots friendships. And I think it was mentioned earlier on about, people have multiple identities. So although we are religious, that's not our only identity. There are things that can connect us. So always trying to look for shared humanity and connecting on those things as friends to strengthen the social fabrics of society.
If I may quickly say something on that, I think to that extent, listening is really important. And there's a good TED talk I can share of a participant of the Westboro Baptist Church, and her take on how other people who listened to her made her change her belief, and they were quite hateful to other people. So the Westboro Baptist Church TED talk, that's very useful on that question. Thank you.
Well, I guess we were told that just in case there's a question of, the participants can also raise their hand and then ask the question. So please feel free, either, type your queries in the chat box or raise hand. And well, till the time, since we have 10 minutes, so I might as well just share a thing or two if it's okay. And just in case there's a question in between, I'll be more than happy to kind of, stop and sort of, pass the mic, as it were. I think there are three things that have come out. Of course, I'm kind of taking a risk here because all the presentations kind of introduced us to a range of concerns and a range of possibilities. But if I were to kind of bring them together and kind of see things that kind of help us see the connections, etc. The first is something that I said earlier as well, this worldly religiosity, in the sense that, and I really like this idea of faith and civic activism kind of being brought together, because in various parts of the world, this is something that we are actually witnessing these days. I mean, with the rise of populist, authoritarian, majoritarian regimes, and the vulgarization of politics, and very, very crazy and jingoistic versions of nationalism, xenophobia, etc. I think because the idea is that religion cannot really be completely neglected. This is something that people tried to do in the 19th century, and there were grave consequences. So religion has to be there, and which is not to say that atheism is not at all welcomed. I mean, people to their own choice, but there are ways in which one can actually make a religious claim. And if one were to kind of bring in this worldly religiosity, of an expression of faith that is more geared towards civic activism, then I think one can do a great deal in terms of the concerns that we have in the world in which we live, notwithstanding the nations we come from. That's the first thing. And just one more thing that I wanted to point out, I think understanding is something that remains at the core. And as a teacher student, I always insist on this. We always talk about the idea of understanding, but I think what is at the core of understanding is that the moment you understand something, you change. You are a different individual, right? So if anyone has understood global warming, then, needless to say, he or she will actually behave a certain way. So the moment I understand that there is an issue with xenophobia, the moment I understand fundamental issues with racism, or whatever, whatever ideology it is that kind of promotes a certain kind of sectarianism or division or hatred or violence, the moment I understand it, I think there has to be some change, noticeable, of course, in my conduct, in my demeanor. That is something that is, I suppose, not happening. So maybe some kind of insistence on understanding. And of course, there's a cost to understanding. It's not easy to understand, which is why very often people are reluctant to understand. So when people say you don't understand, it essentially means that you're not willing to take the risk, because to understand is to actually change yourself, to be willing to be transformed, and transformed significantly. Of course, there are other things as well, but as we've been instructed, and I should walk the talk, we'll close this session. Thank you very much once again, and my sincerest apologies. I really feel bad about the fact that I kind of kept sort of telling you guys, okay, time's over. I really hate doing this, and I hate when others do this to me. So I understand what you must have gone through whenever I sort of said that, or whenever I intervened. But it was lovely being your audience, and I'm sure the participants, those who were here with us, learned a great deal. Please accept my best wishes. Thank you very much. And with this, we can close the session. Thank you.